All right, welcome to Creator Hardware, where today we're talking about terms YouTubers need to know. Cameras is the first one we're going to talk about. This is a video platform, so we need to talk about, well, cameras. First terms we're going to talk about is ISO and white balance. Now, ISO is for video, white balance is for still shots. So they're used a lot interchangeably, but it's actually ISO. It's basically how much light you're letting into the camera. Now, you can set it up automatically or you can manually set your ISO. And all it is going to be is how much light is in the room as far as ambient light, actual lighting, and how bright your video looks in the finished form. I'm not going to do a deep dive on ISO because that's a whole separate video setting up ISO for your situation. All right, FPS. This is what frame rate you shoot in. Frames per second. Now the cinematic thing is 24 FPS. I generally shoot in 30 FPS. I think it's a little more smooth, especially for content where I might slow down a video or speed it up, and either one will be fine. 60 FPS just gives you more information in that photo. 120 FPS, you usually have to step down in quality depending on the camera, but those speeds work better when you're wanting to do really slow motion B-roll. We'll get into B-roll in a different segment, but we'll talk about that as well. Camera aperture. If you've ever looked at camera lenses, you know, they f1.4, f yada yada yada. Basically, it's the amount of light that lens lets in. A higher f-stop means that it does pour in low light conditions. The lower the number, the better it is for low light. It's literally just the hole in the lens, but the smaller the hole, the more light it lets in, the more expensive it is to make and buy. Kodak or file type are basically the same thing. It's what you shoot in. Now I currently, on my A6600, shoot in MP4. Higher end cameras allow you to shoot in different codec. All it is a file system. And depending on the codec, it may be a lot more information stored, it might be a larger file. Really, it doesn't matter when it comes down to it because YouTube's going to compress it anyway, or any other social media. But codec is important because certain programs do not work well with certain codecs. You know, Blackmagic RAW. If you're using Premiere, you're probably going to have Blackmagic software to convert it to a file and color grade it in DaVinci Resolve in order to use it in Premiere. So it adds a step of, you know, editing. MP5 is fine for most people. Now, RAW is a very grayscale way of shooting, but it contains way more information. That's why a lot of YouTubers shoot in RAW so they can do extensive color grading. That's why movies are shot in RAW, because again, you can get the color exactly the way you want it as long as you do decent settings on the camera during production. Really not something you need to worry about unless you have to use Handbrake to convert it to something your editing software uses. MP4 for most YouTubers is more than good enough. Same with ProRes, by the way. It's just a codec. It's just a file type. 4K versus 1080p versus 8K. The best way to describe it is the amount of pixels that you record. When you record in 4K, the pixels, the little dots of color, are way smaller. Same with 8K, more. I shoot in 4K because if you do a 1080p shot and you zoom in a bunch with your editing software, the image gets really grainy really fast because of the larger pixels. With 4K, I can zoom in on my forehead and you basically wouldn't be able to tell if I didn't just put the camera up to my forehead. That's why a lot of people use 4K is because of that flexibility. And obviously 8K, 12K, whatever, but I doubt you're spending $12,000 on a camera to shoot videos for YouTube unless you're, Linus Media Group. All right, crop factor. Now this is something that is kind of important for some people. Most people it won't matter, but I'm using a A6400, which is a crop sensor camera. It means it crops the image in. It gets smaller based on the sensor size. And some cameras with certain lenses will also have a crop factor. Crop factor is basically the amount of screen that you can record in. It basically zooms in a little bit, is the best way to describe it. Most smaller body cameras like the A6600 I'm using have a crop. If you go to a full frame camera, you don't have a crop unless you're in certain settings, but really for most people, it really only affects you on what lenses you need, not so much what kind of video you're gonna shoot. Bitrate is basically the file size. When you're recording 8-bit, which I'm recording 8-bit, it's less information. When you're recording 10-bit, which most RAW, with exceptions, is recorded in 10-bit, it just gives you more information. More information allows you to manipulate it more in an editing software. Again, not really that big of a deal unless you're going for a very cinematic video. Just, you don't need it. Don't worry about it. Color temperature. Now this is important to some extent. Color temperature, cameras vary pretty wildly on the colors they pick up well and don't well. Sony cameras are usually pretty good. I know I'm a Sony fanboy, I'm sorry. But other cameras will bias the video to a certain color and you have to correct that in your editing software, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the color temperature is less important for YouTube and more important for color grading. Average YouTuber, doesn't matter unless you royally screw it up. Quick little thing about media cards. SD cards, figure out what kind of camera you've got and what kind of media it requires. Now my camera has to have high-speed memory cards. Mine take SD cards. If I don't use high speed, it will not let me record in 4K. It will not. Trust me, I forgot video cards and the Best Buy around the corner was closed already, so I had to record in 1080p. It sucked. But my point is that check with your camera manufacturer and get the media that works best for that camera. Nothing worse than, not being able to record in the codec you want because, well, you cheaped out on the memory card. Capacity, 64 gigabytes is gonna be good for most YouTubers. 128, depending on if you do long shoots, weddings, that kind of stuff, but just get the memory card speed that matches to the video camera you use. Audio. Db Decibels. It means how loud you are talking or how loud the noise going on is. Real simple. You've got a, audio source like my Zoom, it will bounce. That is measured in dBs, decibel levels. Quick note about that, and I'll talk about it a little bit. When I set my audio up, I set it low so that I never clip, because the worst thing you can do for audio is have no headroom. Headroom is on your meter. If it spikes towards the red, it's gonna clip. Once you clip audio, there's really not much you can do. You're getting that crackle, the cutouts, it's ruined. Always set your audio low, and then you can boost it in whatever editing software you use so it's at a good level. LUFS, that is loudness unit full scale. It's a different way of measuring audio. Broadcast standard is to set your audio normalize your audio, I should say, which means that the entire audio is similar. It's basically nothing spikes loud, nothing spikes quiet. Normalize it to -21 LUFS. That is the broadcast standard for the United States. You can also, for YouTube, normalize it to -16 or 18. Personal preference, I still do it at -21. That's what this video is normalized to. So there's no spikes. Adobe Audition can do it, Audacity can do it, DaVinci Resolve can do it. Just use your software. That way you don't have any really loud that makes people yank out their headphones, or you don't have anybody bailing from your video because the audio is too low and they can't hear it. Lavalier mic is, well, a lapel mic. It's one that clips onto your shirt, or it can be stuck somewhere. It's basically on your person. That's what a lavalier mic is. A shotgun mic is just a external audio device that is kind of looks like a shotgun. It's primarily set in situations where you have a static person. They're sitting in a, like this. I could use a shotgun mic. I use a lav mic because it's easier to set up, one less thing to deal with. But it's just a microphone that's above you out of the shot, and different way of recording audio. Personal preference, I prefer the ease of setting a lavalier mic up and using a wireless system. Fade and gain. Sometimes you'll have to set that. Fade is bringing the audio down. Gain is boosting it. All right, editing. We're gonna talk, you gotta edit it, I mean, I'm not even that good at doing this kind of stuff, so I have to edit and pull out all the things I screw up. So let's talk editing. Codec. Again, we're gonna talk codec. Presets are your friend. Chances are, when you're exporting it out to upload to, say, YouTube, you're gonna export it to H.264, which is a file type, just like MP4, RAW, ProRes. It's just a file type. YouTube prefers H.264. And in my editing software, Adobe Premiere Pro, there is a YouTube 4K preset. That's what I use. You don't have to use it. The point of it is using that preset compresses that file to make it faster to upload to YouTube. Thing about YouTube and any social media site is they're gonna compress your video, make the file smaller. So might as well pre-compress it, and so I can control as much of the quality loss as possible. That's codec. Color correction. Now, until you've gotten some experience, I don't recommend messing too much with color correction, because it's really easy to screw up your video. Really easy. You can go from decent looking video on YouTube to, oh my God, what the heck is this? Click. Color correction is basically taking the video and correcting the colors that are not represented by the video you shot. Oversimplification, but that's what it is. And raw video, you have to color correct because it's gray when it comes out of your camera. But all the information's there, it's just you have to correct it in post. Aspect ratio. If you've ever shot 1080p, 4K, and tried to put them all in one timeline on your editing software, you have to fix things. That's aspect ratio is, well, this. It's just the size of the video output. Just record everything in the same and you shouldn't have that problem, but certain sites like Instagram have, this way aspect ratio. That's all that means, is just how wide the screen is, how tall the screen is, and all that. Compression is basically taking out parts of the data that may not be needed, making this file of the video smaller for less storage usage on YouTube servers or whoever you upload to. And if you've ever seen the old-fashioned movies or, where they use the clapboard, that's for audio sync. All you got to do when you start a video, and if you're going to have to sync your audio, is clap 3 times, snap your fingers, use a clapboard, whatever. That gives the program something to sync it to. Because nothing's worse than watching a YouTube video and looking like an old Chinese translated video where the mouth moves but the audio's like 3 steps away from it. That's all it is. Most programs do it automatically, but if you record like I do to a separate audio device, or you process your audio, again like I do, you're gonna have to sync it up in post. Exporting, rendering, and encode. These terms are technically used universally. Basically, it's your editing program outputting that video in its final form, but they're used interchangeably. Technically, it's an encode, but exporting, literally it says in Premiere Pro, export and encode. So it's all the same, just different terminology. All right, let's talk various cuts. It's basically a J cut and an L cut are basically manipulating your video and audio so you change perspective where the audio continues or the video continues. That's all it is. It's just a type of audio cut or video cut. You're having a conversation with 2 people and you want to cut to the other person, but you want to see the one person's reaction while the other person's still talking, kind of thing. It's just something you should learn. All right, ripple delete. Ripple delete is automated delete of a cut scene. Basically, you've got a scene that you want to get rid of. There's a point where you're, fixing your hair or whatever, you just want to cut it out. That would be what's called a ripple delete. You just cut on each side of it and you hit ripple delete on your software and it deletes it and pulls the timeline back so there's no blank space. Transitions are basically where you have a cut and you don't want to do a just jump cut. A jump cut is where you cut, nothing changes except the person that's in the screen, and it goes from here to here. Somebody's moving, it's a jump cut. It's just something to soften the blow of something changing in screen. Many of transition presets are in pretty much everybody's software, so it's just a way to soften the blow of, well, a cut. And obviously a cut is when you cut out a scene. Lower third. Lower third is where you've got graphics on the lower third of the screen. When you're talking about something or you want them to subscribe, you put a little icon down here, subscribe, that's a lower third. All right, lighting. This is going to be very simple for a very complex subject. Okay, we've got lighting. The industry standard is what's called 3-point lighting. You've got a key light. That is a light directly at you. Mine's over there to keep reflections off of this. That's a key light to light your face directly. Then you've got a fill light or hair light that lights you from the side that's actually a little far back. Change that around a little bit. That lights you from back here, that's a little harsh. And then you've got backlighting. Now, it's coming up on camera, but I bought these Corsair lights for a backlight and they suck. So don't buy those, but that's a backlight. You want, something behind you to kind of illuminate, give your shot some texture. That's a backlight. And you always want to set up at least your 2 main lights. You want a main light, a key light, and you want a fill light or hair light. Hair light can be above or on the side, but it's to help give your face a little bit of drama without having a bunch of shadows on it. Production. This one you might hear, especially when you're talking TV and movies and that kind of thing, but the whole process still applies. Pre-production. That is storyboarding. If you're doing a complex shot where you're shooting a bunch of B-roll, we'll get to that, that is the planning stage. You know, if you've got to scout out a location, if you've got to plan your shots, if you've got to figure out exactly what your shot list is, that is, you know, I need B-roll of this. I need this shot talking about this. That's your pre-production. That's figuring out everything you need to shoot for that particular video. That's pre-production, that's planning. That's making sure all your ducks are in a row. Production is obviously making the video, getting all those shots on your shot list, you know, figuring out, you know, getting into the space, setting up everything, getting your shots, and all that. Post-production, well, that's the editing and color grading and uploading. B-roll is the beauty shots. It's the best way to describe it. You know, B-roll is you're walking into a coffee shop and you show the talent walking in. That's B-roll. It helps build the story, but is not directly part of the video. You know, you shoot B-roll of, you know, a product you're reviewing. That's the beauty roll, you know, B-roll. A-roll is whatever you've got going on in the main part of the video. That's A-roll. Post-production, well, that's editing and uploading it. You know, color correction, adjusting your audio, adding music if you want to. That's post-production. And the worst thing I can hear is, can you fix it in post? That is every editor's nightmare, because that means they screwed something up royally in production. And the answer is almost always no. I can make it better, but I can't fix it in post. Post-production is, you know, realizing you didn't get that shot, you recorded your audio too loud, you're clipping, you know, the talent kept hitting their lav mic. There's only so much you can do in post. So just the term post-production is editing, uploading, and all that. Hope this information was helpful. As always, hit record, hit upload. Thanks for watching. This is Creator Hardware.